Mr. Cal Robinson, introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself, and we can get this thing rolling because I have questions.
You got questions? I got questions too. And I'm probably not. This may be the only chance that I ever get to interview or ask a question to a presidential candidate. So I have to drop it in your lap. How serious of an issue is incarceration and prison standards, the practices and policies that we have in this country, on your level of importance? What kind of priority?
I'm so glad you brought that up. So one thing that I'm working with, I have an all men's group, professionals, intellectuals. We're working on different aspects and debating each other in private, so I can start to really see what this country needs, what they will want from a presidential candidate. And so I have an all women's group that are working on the same thing. So we're talking about presidential candidates and building policy. So we've covered anything from mass incarceration and that, it's basically slavery, right, with fewer steps, as Rick and Morty would say. I don't know if you're a Rick and Morty fan. Love that show, man. Yeah.
Yes.
So
and you're very right.
With a few more steps. So one thing we're working on, and if I haven't added you to that group, I will do that today, because we're building policy, all men, so they feel comfortable, all women. I even suggested to them, I was like, I would love for y'all to all get together. It's about 30 or so. To all get together in your own group chat, so it's only women, so not even me. I don't want to be the lone male putting pressure on people. So I want them to hash this stuff out, right? We have hard conversations in a civil way, and it has to be solution-based and fact-based. If it meets that criteria, then give me your ideas so I can start to build this policy with my campaign manager, Chulo Rich, who also has some time in prison. So yeah, so that's essentially it. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a sneak peek of what we kind of come down to. One, how do we release, unmask all non-violent offenders, and then immediately give them an opportunity to get put to work? And
you might need me on your team. You really might need me on your team.
Hired.
Here's why. I have my whole life of experience of getting out of prison and then trying to find work, trying to find a paycheck. And finding work and finding meaningful work are two different things. If you take every nonviolent offender out of prison and then you get them a job at McDonald's, not only are you encouraging recidivism, but you're guaranteeing that your re-enterers are living in poverty. And that's just not acceptable when you take into the fact that a lot of these people are nonviolent. A lot of these people have children and families that are dependent on them. It has to be looked at from a deeper level. And I think that one of the most important things you could do is to begin to reinstill, or for the first time, instill in people the necessary element of freedom, which is the capacity to represent yourself, to speak for yourself, to if I'm getting out of prison and you as an employer don't know that my lack of eye contact is not a sign of dismissiveness, it's a learned survival trait that has probably kept me alive more times than I can count, then you may be more empathetic to my physical demeanor. You may understand why I jump, or when you come in the room, or why I look up when I hear the door handle. There's so many psychological effects of incarceration, particularly solitary confinement, that it takes a society opening its doors and someone leading them to do it, as well as people who are re-entering society to have the capacity to assert their needs to fix such an historically overwhelming disconnect in how we plan our society.
Absolutely. Now, I want to touch a little bit on solitary confinement, because that's something I thought was just, of the old way of doing prison. You telling me that it still exists?
It absolutely still exists in most states, and one of the most important misconceptions about solitary confinement is that people go there because they're violent. Not true. People go to solitary confinement usually for non-violent offenses, just like people on the streets go for non-violent offenses. Meaning, oh, you've got an extra half a roll of toilet paper in your cell, and I'm the guard on this shift, and I don't like you. Are you going to SEG or SHU? Special housing unit, solitary confinement segregation unit.
Right.
It goes by a couple different names, and they rework these names every couple of years to make people forget that it's solitary confinement. Think about it. Prison is already a closed off system, right? We don't know what the heck goes on there. Well, I do, but most people don't know what the heck goes on there because it's not publicized. And even if you go physically to see it, you can't just walk in and go take a tour. It is very controlled in the information that it lets out and that it lets in, which is why, projects like Miscarrying Justice League, where you have an entire prison effectively of women who are feeding us a stream of their input, their experience, their stories, their tragedies and heartbreaks, their optimisms. It's so important to keep that connection alive because it's a closed system. Well, in solitary confinement, it's even more closed, meaning the rapes, the abuses, the assaults that happen in there, the suicides, the killings, the murders that happen in there, often at the hands of staff, administrators, it's covered up. Nobody knows what's going on inside of a hole. So ending solitary confinement is a necessary step in bringing transparency to our incarceration practices.
I'm laughing because I just two reasons. Wow. One, I just wrote in my notes here that lacks transparency, and anything that lacks transparency, I have an issue with. There's I had some friends who were very big on, their own private lives within their relationships. Now, I've been married for over 8 years, and it's like, man, how y'all do it? Like, y'all seem like you're doing so well. It's like, well, it's a lot of trust, a lot of communication, right? It's a lot of give and take, right? A lot of sacrifices, a lot of transparency. And it's like, what kind of transparency are you talking about? I was like, well, like, for instance, she has all the passwords to any account that I've ever created. Now, I will admit out there that it's mostly because I usually forget my password. Okay, I'm going to be honest about that. But what that has bred in our relationship is that she feels secure that there's nothing, like if she ever wanted to, not that she does, but if she ever wanted to just browse my history or anything, it's all out there in the open. Like for a long time, for a few years, I didn't even like lock my phone, which she says now that, I'm a professional and all these things, I had to do it. And so we upgraded the phone to where it has the biotech, and we made sure that she had 2 fingers, so she can get into my phone too. She don't have to wait for me to go to sleep and grip my finger and let's see what he's up to. And like that just blew their minds. It was like, man, my girl found my phone. It's like, well, maybe that's the real issue in your relationship. You got stuff in your phone that she found, the relationship is over. You probably are not mature enough or ready for a relationship. And that just takes an honest look. The second reason I'm laughing is Miscarrying Justice League. 1, what does the WHV stand for? And 2, did they steal that from Warner Brothers?
They steal what from Warner Brothers?
The Justice
League.
Whatever. Come on.
I don't know. It's possible that name inspired it. I'm sure Warner Brothers didn't have a WHV, Women Huron's Valley. So that's actually the physical location of the prison, the sole prison that I was talking about that houses women in Michigan. It's WHV is what it's called.
Okay,
but
man.
If they did, I gotta say, that's cold. All right,
they're wearing it better because I watched the last Justice League movie, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm looking for you, Zack Snyder. I have questions. Okay.
So I helped with I did the design of the logo. under the direction of Tamara Washington, who spearheaded this program, who brought it to me. And I gotta say, now that you bring that up, I am totally putting some elements, some Warner Brothers elements off in that logo. I might have to, I might have to apply for some type of permission, but yeah, we're getting some capes in there.
I like it. They need all the help they can get, and with you and a bunch of strong women being real about some very tough things, I think they're the real heroes, and they should pay homage anyway. Are you a Marvel fan?
No.
Uh-oh.
No, and I'm not an anti-fan either. I just don't have the connection to it like a lot of people do. I was connected to different movies coming up, but less superhero movies, more dramatic.
Yeah, see me. Okay, so the drama. I watched. I was riding with an older guy. My teammate's older brother. He was driving. It was just the two of us, and he had some music playing. I was like, man, this is nice. Like, I don't know why, but I feel nice. It was like classical, then some other elements. Sound like I was at a
smooth, like a smooth mix.
No, not even smooth mix. Yeah, so you got to go way back to CDs at the end of the cassette era and the beginning of the CD era. And so what he told me was that it was a soundtrack to a movie called Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks and Daniel Craig.
Hanks. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And so I was just like, a soundtrack? I said, huh. And that really got me thinking, like, have I ever heard a movie soundtrack? And he was like, yeah. He said most soundtracks come from songs and stuff, and that's why, they become popular. And so it made me watch the movie, and I was like, man, this is great. What else is Tom Hanks in? I binge watched that, but then that wasn't enough. So then I started following directors if I like how it looks, right? Or videographers. And then I started if I like the story, even though the movie could be really good or really trash.
Follow the writers.
And so that's kind of what I've done. Now, I brought up Marvel because it took, I didn't even notice it. I just know I like the X-Men. And I didn't realize that Professor Charles Xavier was the Martin Luther King type, and then Magneto was the Malcolm X type.
Malcolm X, yeah.
It just blew my mind. Like, what are some other... Yeah.
Everything I said about not being big on... that excludes the X-Men. Okay. I don't know about Fair DC, enough. And I don't know... But when it comes to the X-Men, yeah.
I love it. Okay, let's talk something else here. About Time Toastmasters. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm founding About Time Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an organization that's worldwide. It's a nonprofit that helps people through its curriculum, which is called Pathways, to reach their presentational goals or to strive towards their presentational goals. So a path that one person might be on, for example, I'm on a path called Persuasive Influence. I don't want to just give speeches or learn how to speak or gain comfort speaking just to hear myself or for you to hear me. I want to learn how to move your opinion about something from here to here or here. So the path that I'm on is calibrated so that the speeches which have objectives and goals that have to be met will challenge me to step outside of my comfort zone and learn something different, do something different, and by the end of my path, hopefully be confident enough to lead others to be able to be persuasive. And that's a big of a 40,000 foot view on what Toastmasters is at a more personal level. Yeah, the least. At a very personal, precise level, to answer your question, I actually have to get a little bit personal here. So I got out of prison around age 21. I've been incarcerated as an adult since my childhood, and a lot of traumatic experiences have happened in prison. You don't throw a 16-year-old in a prison full of adults and expect them to grow. Expect that child to grow at the same pace. You'll be stifled in some areas. You're going to be hopefully advanced in some areas. And for me, communication and speaking is an area where I was totally deficient. And that wouldn't matter unless communication was pretty much the most important thing in the world. Your awareness of how you present. If you ever, I'm sure you get this as someone who has probably watched themselves on camera and went back and looked at footage. When you first started off, you're probably like, oh shoot, that was terrible. You know, God, I don't want to watch this. Stop the tape. I don't know if you were, but that's how I was. And that affects every area of your life. That affects your romantic relationships, your ability to communicate. Mm-hmm. It affects your professional relationships. And prison has a way of demoralizing people so that you forget that you have a voice. And when you get out, you have to use it again. Well, for me, it took probably 15 years of being out to begin to become aware of this deficiency in communication skills. And once I got into Toastmasters and started engaging their program, it probably took 15 minutes before I understood that I can grow, I can change. This communication style that I have is flexible, right?
Right.
Maybe I can start to use some. It's fluid. And you want it to be fluid in one direction. Prison is a heck of a roadblock to that momentum, and will derail someone into just being a substandard communicator. And for an issue as big as mass incarceration, we don't need substandard communicators at the front of the line trying to bring awareness. If the best hope of the people on the inside is us on the outside speaking up and changing things, then you need effective communicators, and you also need formerly incarcerated people. So this Toastmasters Club is intended to bring those two resources together, equipping people who are formerly incarcerated with a curriculum and platform that is proven, but with the sensitivity of a formerly incarcerated person creating it. And we're looking to find members to join, some more members to join this club. If you're interested or you want to know more about it or its intention or its setup, you can you can email abouttimetoastmasters@gmail.com, and you'll get some information that will clarify whatever you need clarified.
That I love. Oh man, it's funny enough because on episode, one of our older episodes, we talked to the newest member of Urban Academia, Jasmine Jazzy J Adams Jude. And we talk all the time about communication and how to effectively communicate. And so one thing I came across is Wheel's law of communication, right? Or Wheel's law of miscommunication. It's probably a better way of saying that. And Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, which, I don't agree with everything he says, but the tactics are real. The knowledge is real. His experience is definitely real. And he's really good about teaching other people how to communicate, because I feel like that I'm one of them. I'm a baby communicator, even though I do this for a living now. That it's still always something to learn. Like Erykah Badu said back in the day, the man who knows something is a man who knows nothing at all. That knows he knows nothing at all. And so that Wheel's law of miscommunication, which is whatever can be misunderstood will be misunderstood. So now I feel like I'm hypersensitive to trying to watch people's body movements and read the room, which I'm terrible at, but I'm working on. And but I feel like in communication, I can see I can see how they thought that, because they probably thought I said this thing and meant it this way. So one of the tactics is, if I make a statement, Cal, you would have to make the statement back to me, and then I would have to agree that's what I said. And you're muted just in case you want to get in here.
But you mean using different words?
Not even different words necessarily, but literally,
Okay.
if I say, "Hey, 2 + 2 is 4," and you will be like, "So you're saying 2 + 2 is 4?" And I'm like, "No, it's not what I said at all." It's like, "Okay, what are you saying?" I'm saying 22 + 2 is 24. So you're saying 22 + 22 is 24. Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, so based off of what you just said, now let's continue on the conversation. And the rules of the Urban Academia show is, one, everybody's a little bit right. Everybody's a little bit wrong. Both sides have something of value to share. I think that this country is, like, unfortunately gotten away from that. Even though we had our differences, there was something to be said about working across the aisle on the Hill. And that just simply can't happen now, because now it's become a giant sporting event, right? So each side has to protect their brand no matter what. And nothing is getting done because of it. Because all they think they have to do, and these are from the politicians' mouths themselves. A lot of them were asked, what's the number one thing for a politician? Oh, to get reelected. That says something. So I love hearing things like Toastmasters. Count me in. Like, what's the membership fee? What do I have to do? Like, break that down for me.
So to answer your question, it's a little under $7 a month for, and you sign up in 6-month periods. And I have to tell you, it's been one of the most educational experiences of my adult life. It has empowered me with networking. I've met so many people who I would have otherwise just never ever knew existed, who are also serving in important roles, important fields, and equally passionate. It's allowed me to cross-pollinate the advocate impulse that lives within me, and it's allowed me to not just find people and show up and say hey, but to find people show up and say what I mean. It's been the difference. To answer it in a sentence, the Toastmasters experience has been the difference between me showing up and saying what anybody can say, or showing up and saying what only I can say, and doing so effectively.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Is there any kind of example you can give us? Any sort of like,
Sure.
Person A said it this way, and here's what we taught them, how we taught them to say it better.
Yeah. There's too many to pick from, but I'll do my best here.
Hot seat time.
So the way that it works is, within the curriculum, you have to give a series of speeches. One speech that I had to give, actually a couple of the first speeches that I had to give, I would show up with effectively the same speech, but I wouldn't meet the objectives on it, or I wouldn't effectively deliver it. And you have people, the same way it's my job as a speaker to go by these rules, it's someone else's job to evaluate me by this set of rules. So that allows, or what it forces me to do, is to not just say what I want to say. Because, if words on merit alone were effective, I'd have the whole freaking country involved in prison reform by now. But they're not. And prison reform is not sexy to everyone. So now I have to learn how to deliver things in a way. I have to be aware that I have to be aware that you want to know what I'm going to say next. I have to think about everything from different angles. And I'm thinking as a presenter and as a listener and as an audience and as a multi-dimensional arrangement. It brings everything together so that you become aware of how long you're speaking, of whether or not your points are getting across, and what your nonverbal communication, the overwhelming majority of how we communicate, is saying about you. And I think if someone's equipped with that, and they already have the passion for advocacy like I do and so many others do, then you just get a world where people are speaking more effectively about issues that I think people want to care about. You talk about the need for bipartisan reach. Oh my God, how many people are affected on both sides of the aisle by incarceration and unfair incarceration practices and living conditions. And you know, if you're in there, if you don't, it don't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican,
right?
Your loved one in there is your loved one, and so it's an area where there's a lot of reach. There's potential for reach across the aisle, because nobody at all is satisfied with our justice system.
Okay, see, you just hit on something that is definitely okay. You're hired. I'm not sure what position or capacity you're supposed to be. What do you call it? In my cabinet or the campaign run, but I'm here to tell you, you're hired, because that is the crux of my issue. Because I know me going, I've been poor. I've been, well below the poverty line. I've been above it. I've been middle class, and like we're doing okay now. And so having that personal experience with each level, every single level, I was unhappy with the way that things were going for myself, my family, people in my community, my friends, my enemies. I have this thing where I can't help but to be drawn, as Tyrion Lannister says in Game of Thrones, to broken things in people. Because if you've been telling me, I'm an old athlete, so if you've been telling me all my life, push yourself, Gales, because this team is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, I'm looking at all these weak links and I'm trying to depict a positive outcome from this, but I can't imagine one, because we have so many weak, rusted, broken chain links in this country. And I know I can't be alone in that. I know other people are paying attention to this and feeling what I feel and seeing what I see. So how is it that we connect all those things? Because something has to change. Whatever we're doing now is not working, so I need to see something different. And then I was challenged to step up and be something different, which is why I'm running for president, for a better America. Not tomorrow, not going back to make it great again from yesterday, but a better America today. How'd I do? Was that good? You muted, but how was that?
That was, man, story of my life. I need to change my name to that. No, that was excellent. Your delivery, it incorporated pauses right where they needed to be.
That's awesome.
As the timing of it, you naturally have a smooth voice. I don't know if you just got some great equipment, but I don't sound like you. So your the delivery of that was great, and it kept me wondering where you're going with this, but also kind of feeling like I know where you're going with this, which is right where you want to be. That's the sweet spot for an audience member. I want to be entertained and feel like I'm with you, I'm in, but also I want to feel like I'm being led. And to your point, to actually answer what you said in your comment, how do we do it? We need, in all of these different areas that need reform, which you're going to have to consider, you're going to have to speak to as a president of the United States, you're going to need people who are experienced. And when it comes to being incarcerated, it's a slightly different experience. You can't read a book. You can't watch a documentary. You can't watch a documentary and understand what it's like to be in prison. You can't read a book and understand what it's like to be homeless. These are experiential situations, and
absolutely,
it takes the people who can speak to them from the heart, who can tell their story. I don't know what it's like to be a presidential candidate. If I was to write a story about it, I couldn't tell that story in the same way that you could. Everybody's story holds power, and we need to start promoting the voice of the most impacted to tell the stories of the issues that are least told, among which I think incarceration is number one.
Absolutely. Now, first order of business, I'm going to have you speak to my wife, because she has threatened, and I'm trying to clean this up as much as possible, because like I said, I want this to get out there to as many people as possible. And there's an algorithm that we always have to be aware of. It's omnipresent, right? She has threatened. We were sitting at the dinner table, and she threatened to just go ahead and sign those divorce papers now, because I want no part of that mess. which is the funniest thing that happened at the table. As soon as she said that, my 4-year-old pointed to the front door. Now, here's the thing about timing. Here's the thing about timing. My children are always confusing me. I think they're very brilliant, very capable young men and young women. But every now and then it's like, that was so knuckleheaded. Are they smart? You know? So I keep fluctuating back and forth because like my son will say something almost prophetic, right?
Yeah.
Great delivery, super confident. But then I also call him licking the sliding glass door. So it's like, is he smart? Is he smart? So for that to be so perfectly timed, I feel like it was like maybe God or something, right? Literally like possessing him in order to be that perfectly timed. She says, go ahead and sign those divorce papers. He pointed to the front door while staring me down. I'm like, wait a minute. What do you know about divorce?
How do you know what divorce is?
It was just so perfectly timed, man. But yeah, so I understand that on such an intimate level. And I hesitate to say unfortunately, because every experience has something to teach you, good, bad, or ugly. I've had some interesting experiences. I'm more interested in your personal ones, especially being someone who was incarcerated at such a young age. And how did you avoid being taught how to become more of a criminal? Because do you find that happens often? That you come in for one crime and then you earn more time on your sentence because the system is so broken? It's just teaching you how to be like upgrade your criminality.
Jay Zilla, I'm not supposed to say this in public, but I'm gonna say it.
Uh-oh.
I went and learned how to become a better criminal. And you're right. That's a sad reality for a lot of people. You go in there, you're not intending to. You're introduced into this system that you don't understand. You haven't had anyone to guide you through. And your family even can't really empathize with what you're going through because they haven't been there. So you gravitate naturally to people who either have something that you want or are directly or indirectly teaching you something that you need to know to survive.
Right.
And in there, you need to know how to outthink people, or you need to be skilled in thinking, I should say. And cunning, you have to be reckless at times, careless, you have to be dangerous at times. You have to demonstrate all of these different faces just to survive. And, maybe it'll make you a great actor, but it doesn't make you equipped for communicating with people sincerely and touching people's hearts, which is what I think we all want to do. Yes. Everybody that I know gets out of situations like prison, and we, rather than saying, oh my God, this experience is horrible, let me get the heck away from this, we come back. People ask me what I do as a empowerment strategist. Half of what I do is helping people break into prison, meaning I introduce people to realities, and I have to try to do it overwhelmingly from outside in because it's harder to do it from inside out. But you need both, and the people who are inside often need some type of care or rest period, or before any of that, just relief. Just a friend to answer the phone, to consistently be there and say, yeah, I researched what you was looking into. I made this call to such and such for you. Yeah, I let your kids know you were doing all right, like you asked. Right. Or yeah, I sent this email for you. And that alone begins this reinforcement that this person does matter, that what they have to offer to the world is there. Most importantly, that they're not defined by their worst day ever. To put it in a phrase, that's really what advocacy, I think, baseline does for everybody. It reminds them, in a place where nothing else does, that they're more than their worst mistake.
That's incredibly important. Because I've seen, like, being a father, one of the things it's taught me is to really understand how humans are supposed to work. We had a young lady who's a podcaster, Jamie Moorhead. Shout out to her down there in Tullahoma, Tennessee. Right? She literally, got pulled over because her tent. They raided her tent with a machine. It
Too dark.
Too dark, and she fought it. So first, she took it to several different places. So she didn't just go to one shop. She went to several shops and had them tested. All okay, every place. Now in science, there's always a theoretical yield and an actual yield, and you never get 100% of the theoretical yield. In her personal experiment, she got 100% yield, which means she is definitely in the clear, and she fought them about it. And I think she went as far as to even like check their tent, and their tent was too dark.
That's what it sounds like had to happen, because if 100% theoretical yield means their machine is off.
Your machine,
either their machine or the administrator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are constant examples like that. But she put a video out because she said, I want to tell you guys why, because she calmed down a little bit. This is the person who has called the police on herself because she felt herself getting too amped up because somebody was playing about her money. Absolute gangster, right? Absolute gangster. I don't understand it. Look, I'm looking for somebody to pair this young lady with because she needs a warrior, leader, man, right? Not need. I want to be careful there. I think that her paired with someone like her will just be the next Michelle and Barack
Perfect
Obama.
Match.
Oh, powerful, all on her own, single mother from day one. And so I'm looking at that, and so she talks about, I really got upset because I'm thinking about my 15-year-old son who's about to start driving, and how differently that could have gone if it was him instead of her. You know what I mean? And so that fear, right? Because she says that's not the first time he's dealt with racism, and she outlines in this short video several different times that her son has had to deal with. She said the first time he was around, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. And he and his white friend were making plans to have a sleepover. And so his white friend asked his white family, and they said no. And so they goes back, and kids are very honest like this, out of the mouths of babes, the book says, right? And so he says like, well, my parents said no, but here, and the boy says, why? Says, well, because you're black. Now the little white boy, he didn't get too crazy. He just says, because you're black. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna wait for them to go to sleep and hide, or I'm gonna wait around dinner. You can sneak over and I'll hide you in my closet. And then when they go to sleep, we can get you out the closet and we can play. And I thought of that 20+ minute video. That child had more sense than anybody commenting, anybody watching, present company included. They got right to work. Woo, racism. So here's what we're gonna do. Like, they didn't go, oh, racism, and they didn't have the sleepover. Racism. What can we do? I have an idea. That's what I want more people to do, man.
And what you're saying, the point of what you're saying to the audience, if they're not getting it, is that it's simple. It's so simple a child can figure it out, but a lot of these things we complicate as we become adults. And I think the exact same thing has happened in incarceration. It's one of those things. You can look, you as a parent, you know you don't want your child there. Everybody in there is somebody else's child, which means that we need to incorporate in our punishment the elements of mercy, of just humanism, that we would want extended to our child if they were the person who were guilty of whatever or innocent, which is often the case and not explored far enough. But yes, it's so freaking simple. A child can do it. And what I love about that illustration is that not only did he do it, not only did he figure out the problem, but the solution was natural.
natural.
Okay, it wasn't a great solution. It wasn't like you could stick another human in the closet and that's going to last too long. But
Right.
it's okay. I know my mom, I know my dad, I love them, they mean the world to me. But that's some BS, and we're just not going to go with that. And I think it's time for us as a society to hear that message, and as well as and my goal is to develop this people who are the communicators, or help develop the communicators who are going to pass that message on and make it childlike simple.
Childlike simple. That's right. How did it go? I think it was Denzel Washington in Training Day. Come on, tell it to me. Talk to me like a 5-year-old. Let's go. And so that's how I love, let's just strip all this extra stuff out of here, throw that out. This is too much, this is too heavy, throw it all away. Let's strip it down to its basic essence, and can we have effective change here? And I think too often what ends up happening is we strip it down and go, okay, we can do this. Well, you know what will help? We're going to provide free meals for every kid in America. But that's the only policy. It's not just that we're malnourished. It's not, it's a myriad of things that are causing this issue. And just to look like you're trying, you literally say, okay, we're going to fix this one issue. Look, Black people, we care about you. We're giving your kids free meals, food stamps, Section 8 housing, but still not addressing the issue of policing in this country. Not in any serious, meaningful way. So what is amplified science's part? What is amplified silence? What is your part in that? And unmute yourself before you give your answer.
Okay, can you hear me clearly? Because I got a fan on, and I don't know if it's bringing you any background music. Because I probably should have said that an hour ago.
No, it's fine. I can't hear you. Yeah, so they have echo cancellation, which helps with some of the surrounding noise. I had to make sure to find software that does that because I have 4 children floating around here.
Right? You can't shut everybody up. You can't keep it quiet.
I can't. And they're very well behaved, but it's always, Daddy, can I? But it helps a lot. But go ahead, to your point. What is amplified silence's part?
So amplified silence was my introduction, if you will, into advocacy. And when I started it, I didn't know how to do much. Mind you, when I started Amplified Silence, I probably didn't know how to send an email at the time. And that sounds that sounds extreme until a year later, and I see that so many people who are also involved in this work, who've been in it longer than me, who've done way more time than me, who are the best voices to promote this issue, don't know how to use Google either, or don't know how to send an email, don't know the difference between the search engine and where you enter the domain. And then I realized, okay, it's not just me. So why am I, what am I waiting for to get collaboration on this issue? I'm gonna use what I know, and whatever I can do with that, with everything I know, is what I'm going to do. What I did is Amplified Silence, which means I had the ability to record, to connect with prisoners, lots of prisoners. And because of, now this is where a little luck comes into it, because of some of the people who I met, I was able to kind of have this domino effect of meeting some interesting or talented or unique people who had cases and stories that were just so out of this world that it's like, dang, I got to hear about this. Or I got to, I got to talk to this person because I've never heard nobody on the outside say anything like this. So I started meeting effective communicators, people who wrote legislation, people who were inside of prison as prisoners, teaching other people courses on how to speak or how to do peer mediation. And what I started, I expect to be rubber stamped, if you will, in any project that I'm a part of. So the MCJL, the Miscarrying Justice League, that is different project, different, and it's slightly different, but it's the message, connect the inside and the outside, because
Right.
people on the outside need to know what's going on from people on the inside. Very important point. And in this case, it's focused on women. The women's prisons. Women, I just got to say this. Women face so many more unique challenges while incarcerated.
Yes.
And they don't get nearly a tenth of the support that our brothers do while they're incarcerated. For whatever reason. There's, we could theorize back and forth on it. For whatever reason, they don't have the support and the people showing up. And this is just an example of someone's, using what they had, a connection with me, to create that outlet, to create that platform, to specifically amplify the needs, concerns, and experiences of the women inside of prison. Is still to be determined if we as a society are going to hear and respond. I come in right at the making sure we hear part, and that's what Amplified Silence was about. And
That's amazing. That's amazing. You said so much there, boy. I'll tell you what, like, I'm gonna have to rewatch this a few times just to get it all. And so one thing you said was about how everything is connected. Now, so my wife and I are going to talk a little bit about my mental health, right? But I have the tendency to kind of, maybe I'm a baby empath, if you know what that is. For those of you who don't, like, there's a story out there, oh, she's going to kill me for not knowing this author and the title of that book. I swear I wrote it, Professor. I swear I did. But in the story, it talks about how this lady is an empath, to the point that her brothers, how they would tease her is they put some hot sauce or, ketchup on her arm and go, oh no, my arm. And it would affect her so much that her skin began to bleed. Right. For those of y'all who are just listening on like iTunes and Spotify, you can't see this brother. He's muted back there laughing out loud, quite literally. Right.
Yeah, I'm glad they can't see me because y'all was cracking up. That was creative. You got to give it to the kids. You got to give it to the kids.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a voice there that we just completely ignored for a long time. And then those kids who have been silenced, they look for ways to amplify the adult silence. Like, shut up a little bit. I'm the adult now. Here's what I want to happen. And what happens when you do that, it's almost like what gets pledges in trouble, right? At fraternities. This idea that, like, I got hit with the paddle and haze the year before, now it's your turn. We're just passing it along, right? Tradition, proud tradition. What? Why? Can't we just go volunteer somewhere? What do you mean I gotta get hit with a paddle and run through campus naked? Like, you didn't like that. How about we just stop it? Mm-hmm.
It's savage. It's savage. And it's the same stubborn rigidity of thinking that I think causes us as a society to dismiss the realities of what we put people through. Jeremy, is two, if I can call you Jeremy, it's three things actually that I think make it really difficult to discuss prison. And it makes us just want to shy away from it. One of them is there are some really dangerous people in prison, behind bars. There are a lot of innocent people behind bars. That's a problem. And third, you got a lot of people there who don't fit either one of the other two categories who we just haven't figured out how to deal with yet. That reflects upon our whole society. You feel me? It's more comfortable to look away, but we talked about a childlike simple earlier. I think about the children of these mothers, and I don't just think what they did. Their crime is not the only thing, or their conviction is not the only thing that comes to mind.
Right.
Basic empathy for other human beings. We all make mistakes. No, if you don't hear anything else I say on this podcast, listen, just know that punishment should never be infinite. It just undermines it undermines punishment as a practice, and it re-incentivizes, or it incentivizes recidivism. It does not heal people to throw them in a place where they're decoupled or disconnected from
Right.
the family who would be the first naturally to support them, to be their emotional support. And it doesn't serve any purpose to say, well, you're done for life, to send this 30-year-old to prison for the rest of their life, especially if there's no evidence that they're going to be a repeat offender. We've got to think about restorative justice as a mechanism to service not just the people who are incarcerated, but to also help mend the wounds of our historically racist prison system on so many families. You have these three things that make it hard for us as a society to look at prison. And it's time to start thinking about restorative justice, where we think about not just the infraction of the person who we're putting behind bars. We think about the infraction of our society on their natural pattern of mental health. We think about the effects on their children. We think about the victim. We think of, we just think more inclusively than we do in our lock them up and throw away the key. For one, that's something racist people say, period, point blank. That's just something racists say, because it's so easy for they're not doing any of the mental homework, as if we don't know that there's some more innocent people in there. We have 3,000 to date, 3,381 people, if you check with the National Registry of Exonerees, to date, who have been proven innocent. Do you think that's all that's actually there? It's not. There are tens or dozens of thousands, if not more, who are overcharged and over incarcerated, and they have children, they have mothers, they leave jobs, they have communities, and they're the best resource that we have for helping steer other people away from it. I'm sorry, I took to go off on a rant, but I had to. No.
You don't apologize that for at all. I'm not even sure what you're apologizing for. It's too many gems for you to
I'm
be
trying
apologizing.
not to say, because I try to decouple racism where I can from the conversation, because it's an extra element of nonsense,
right?
Of human created nonsense that you can now debate, when I don't think anyone's debating how they would feel if it was their child in those conditions. And that's an easier point to get across. It's an easier space to move people or persuade people in than causing people to actually recognize the real racism, the obvious racism that one could speak to, that is inextricably linked to incarceration. Going back to the days when incarceration was when our criminal justice system was slavery. Through the era of people just going to jail for jaywalking because we need to fill the prisons up, or looking at a white woman because we need to fill the prisons up. That is a conversation, and coming from Columbia, Tennessee, I know I don't have to reinforce that to you, but to the world outside who don't know, racism still literally affects a lot of people's lives. The fear of black people, the inability of looking white people in the eye, on a day-to-day basis, it is real, and it affects self-confidence. It affects people's, social mobility and their potential for growth and learning, and it oftentimes affects their freedom. But incarceration is a discussion that we can have on another episode. Sorry for talking so great.
No.
I think that's what I was apologizing for at first, was talking to them.
No, so here's the thing. I talk a lot. I mean, like a lot. So if you're saying things and I'm over here quiet, that's rare. I think the audience can agree. Like, just soak this in for a minute. How much Jay Zilla is just chilling because you're dropping so many gems. And like, so I sent you a private message. Take a look at that. I'm a filibust for you. One of the things you talked about is like, why have things not changed? And I think my theory is because we've drawn too many lines in the sand. So to your point about, trying to take racism out, right? I think you have Dr. Martin Luther King, who did some incredible things. But if people watched his entire history all the way to his death and beyond, the last interview he gave, public interview that he gave, he talked about how he was lamenting the "I Have a Dream" speech because he quickly realized, like, oh my goodness, people got these little crumbs and think racism is gone. How dangerous is the "I Have a Dream" speech? Like, my God, that's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words as he's talking about that movement didn't cost the country anything.
We are incarcerating people in a way that is certain to impose psychological trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The type of trauma, the type of harm that if you went out and caused to another person, you wouldn't have no more bank accounts. They would have your bank accounts.
Right.
From now on. If we had to pay the bill for the treatment of people who we've locked up, man, people we've locked up for mental health needs, for homelessness, if we had to pay the bill for that, then our country would finally be in the type of financial insecurity that we pretend to be in when Black people need the help. But it takes me to that statement in something I wrote recently. I need to put it in the bio. But it's today I want us to make that revolving door a sliding door and let people who are currently or formerly incarcerated demonstrate, and in some cases decide which side of it they're on. But I think what we'll find if we get the courage to do that is that most of them, are me and you.
I love it. So again, to your point about making it childlike, I took my children to, it was a program. We were in the dome. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's basically you lay back and you look at the ceiling and they have some sort of presentation, right? And this particular one was on fractals. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with fractals, go out and just watch a YouTube video on it. It's fascinating. One single formula basically mathematically explains all of existence. One. It's just this repeating thing. And if you want to go out and test it, go out and look at, plant a seed, grow things. It starts as this, then it sprouts down and up. And then the things, everything has a function. We got the leaves, pulling in nutrients from the sun, also extracting O2 from the atmosphere and giving us, oxygen, right? And then beyond that, some plants actually give us food. Cacti produces water in the desert. Everything has a function. And I'm trying to tell my kids, let's strip everything down to its essence, right? Now, biblically, I'll try to look at the spiritual side of things. But let's keep it scientifically, because not everybody's a believer, and that's fine, right? I'm not here to try to convert anybody. That's your own personal journey, in my opinion. So scientifically, the same things that make up the dirt, the sky, the house, the sun, everything that we know, each other, atoms, molecules, it's all the same stuff. All the same stuff. I'm a nerd, so I like, all these superhero movies and stuff. One of my favorite is The Watchmen, where, you got Dr. Manhattan, who's like God level superpowered, right? But because he's God level superpower, he could just think things and take all guns away from Earth, right? He can think things and he can manipulate people's minds to where they're only peaceful and they don't have the capacity for violence. And so his fellow crime fighter was like, why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you do something? And he just says, I'm finding myself slowly detaching. He says, because there's the same number of molecules in a dead body than in a live one. So it's hard for me to differentiate. Whew, that's heavy. He's so powerful that it's like, oh, all of this stuff is the same material. So, so what? Yeah.
Yeah, it weighs if a gram is a gram, yeah, it weighs the same.
Oh, that reminds me of that old joke, right? The old riddle. What? How much does a ton of feathers weigh?
Versus a ton of bricks. Or which one weighs more?
Which one weighs more? Right.
That reminds me of one of the most relevant connections to this advocacy experience that I've had. People often ask me, Kyle, you meet these people you don't really